やれやれ、またか。あんたは大事な人柱候補なんだ。
Ah.
元気でいてくれなきゃ困るんだ
Dr.
よ。
Marco, important sacrifice.
ずっと考えていた。人柱とは何なのか。お前たちは私に何をさせようとしているのか。今お前たちがやっているのは、この国と国民すべてを利用して巨大な錬成人を作ること。
I mean, they hinted at that in the first episode of the series, right?
賢者の意志を作るためのもの、違うか。
惜しい。でもいい線いってる。ラストから聞いてるよ。あの村に手を出さない代わりに協力するってね。どうす
Okay.
る？協力して国民全部滅ぼす？協力しないであの村の人間全部消しちゃう？章を切り捨てりゃ大は助かる。少し考えりゃわかることなのにさ。まあもっともそれがあんたたち人間ってやつだ。理屈より情が先に立つ。いつか殺した男もそうだった。やつの女房に化けてみせたら手を出せなくて逆転のカードを逃した。
Inside the belly. Oh? Am I about to see Salim again?
人間相手に随分手こずっているじゃないですか、ラス。スカーに逃げられ、グラトニーまで連れ去られるとは君らしくもない。
ああ、そうだな。
嬉しそうですね。
否定はせんよ。
Wow.
少し楽しい。60年生きてきて、
Who is
こう
this?
して今国のトップに立っている。すべて父上の予定通りに。マスタング大佐にエルリック兄弟、そして外の国から来た者たち。老快な我々がいいようにかき回されている。
Hold on, who's he speaking to?
若者の時代がすぐそこまで来ているのかもしれない。
Pride?
プライド。
ラス、君は長く人間と接しすぎた。
Oh, is it in the...
そうかもしれん。
今の反逆とも取れる発言は父上には報告しないでおきましょう。
Whoa, that was interesting.
マスタング。
Whoa.
ランファここから出るぞ。
何があったのですか？
怪物が
Into the belly.
腹の中に
じゃ
怪物を飼っていた。こいつを生かして返す理由がない。
It's not gonna be that easy. Whoa. The monster inside the belly.
なんだ。
All right. He's still recovering.
くそ、こんな時に。知るか。俺はただの一般人だ。こんなわけのわからん戦いに巻き込まれて死んでたまるか。
You can't allow it.
あいつら何もたもたしてやがる。
It's not him, is it? Yeah.
この状況でおめおめ帰れというのか。
足手まといなんだよ。
Yeah.
本気で役に立ってません、大佐。
トニッコのボケ大佐は。こっちはあのグラトニってやつから情報を引き出さなきゃならないんだね。
ここに残ってあいつと戦う。
Pen.
子供だからとかそんなの関係ないよ。
今回の作戦の言い出しっぺは俺たちだ。ここまで手を貸してくれてありがとな。
それは人を殺す道具だ。あなたたちの命を守る道具よ。
Yeah, good point.
お前の手は人を
He's
殺
not
す
gonna
手
take
じゃ
it.
ない。
Yeah, he's not gonna accept it.
死なないでね。
Okay, actually, yeah, maybe. Yeah, he has to.
カルト君。
行くんだ。くそ、ガキどもが。
ガキ。
ああいうのが早死にするんだよ。
ロイマスタングはどこだ。
Jeez.
よくもラスト。うるさいんだ。戦うっつったけど、ぶっちゃけ。キャラも変わってるし。
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the first time.
どうしたの？
Oh yeah, it could be.
犬？
止まれグラトニー。いやあ、久 久しぶりだね。
Yeah. They are important sacrifices after all, so
世話焼かせやがって。
マスタングがいた。ラストの敵。ナムなんてやる。
大佐はダメだ。エルリック兄弟もな。
そんな。
Ling,
さ
careful.
っきも気配を感じたが、中に何人いる？ホムンクルス。俺は真の国皇帝第12子、その名を。
なんでよし。
父の胸にあるのはいつもこの国の人たちのこと。みんなが平和に暮らせるようにたくさんの問題に取り組んでいます。父は家族を忘れたことはありません。僕を、母を愛してくれます。僕の言葉に父はいつも耳を傾けてくれる。
Look at those eyes.
僕の願いをいつも聞いてくれる。
さて、締め殺されたいか、噛み殺されたいか。
Always the choices, huh?
刻まれる？
そんじゃ。
Oh.
小さい頃から暗殺の危険にさらされ続けてるんでね。反則技も身につけざるを得なかったんだよ。
Fair play, man.
おとなしく捕まってくれないかな。
クソが！人間風情が見下してんじゃねえ。
That continues.
ホムンクルス。
よし、取った。
Ja.
お前ら食べちゃダメなの。最後の目が食べたいのに。
おいおい、こっちの邪魔を。
Oh, wow.
やっぱり人間だな。何？そう、人柱を飲ませるわけには。
Into the belly? Oh no. They got sucked in?
飲んじゃった。
バカ野郎。その体で何ができる？
Great shot. Yeah, she gets to see.
この際、敵味方をはっきりさせようと思ってね。
たくどいつもこいつも。てめえの傷も治りきってないのに、この上まだ無茶をしようってのか。
それに戦場に子供たちだけ残してきた。ここで行動しなければ大人として示しがつかん。
それにしても意外です。大佐がこのような大胆な行動に出られるとは。
大胆なものか。外堀から埋めようというだけだ。それに
お前さんを理解して支えてくれる人間を一人でも多く作っておけ。
遅まきながらあいつの忠告に従ってみようと思ってね。
Is it gonna pan up? Yeah. Whew.
栄光の門か魔窟の入り
The
口か。
entrance to hell. It's quite the entrance.
時にグラマンのタヌキじじいは元気かね。
相変わらずです。
Yeah, the chess match.
優秀だが情に脆くてね。
Alright, there you go.
負傷
Use
した
that,
者を
right?
自ら助けに行き、事業を乱すようなところがあった。
何かと相談に乗ってくれるだろうとグラマン中将が。
またタヌキ一本取られたというわけか。
Try to have a look at that map back there. Nicely
おっと会議
introduced Mustang.
そこまで一緒に行こう。市政の噂もバカにできんからな。
しかし大半はたわいのない話ばかり。
Beautiful.
スカーが猫に餌をやっていたとか、死なない人間が現れたとか、大総統がホムンクルスだとか。私などがこのような。
Oh, is he about to run into?
大総統がホムンクルスだとか。続けたまえ。
どうしたね、マスタング大佐。私がホムンクルスだからどうだというのかね。何か問題でも？
Yeah, we're stabbed a bit too soon.
そ 危機が迫っているというのではなく、軍そのものがやばいということか。鋼のここは地獄の底だったようだ。
Oh, wow. It's gonna end. That's blood, my dude. Into the belly. Whoa. Ha. God damn it. All right. So inside the belly, right? That title, adequate title for this episode. I mean, in that sense, it's not something new, is it? You know, I love the titles of this anime because a lot of times the title itself is quite applicable to many different characters, right? At that moment in time, perhaps. It's, you know, it's literally applicable and metaphorically as well. Now, you know, Mustang asked the question, is this the entrance to hell? Or sorry, let me flip that. Are these the gates to glory or the entrance to hell? He found out real quick. As he does kind of slip up, right? He kind of oversteps a bit too soon. Indeed, for Roy Mustang, inside the belly of the beast, right? And then of course for Ed, literally inside the belly of the beast. You know, I'm calling him Beast, but I've got to say, I actually felt kind of bad for Gluttony in this episode, especially once Gluttony's been told that he cannot eat the Elrics, right? That he cannot go after Mustang. And, you know, there's that moment as he's trying to avoid fighting them, you know, that voice acting. Earlier, there's quite a fierce performance for Gluttony, right? And it's a different demeanor. And, you know, Ling noticed this as well. You know, the whole personality has shifted. Because no one's used to seeing Gluttony like this. But I don't know. I kind of had a bit of sympathy for Gluttony in this episode, right? Because Gluttony is the one sin that's clearly not as capable mentally as the rest, right? And a lot of times, or for the most part, actually, most of his actions are directed by one of the other sins, right? He's essentially used as a dog, a tool. I mean, yeah, you know, he can be quite formidable as depicted in this episode. But, you know, before I kind of deviate too much, let me kind of, you know, circle back to my initial point. I'll come back to the battle in the forest. I just thought there was something so, maybe it's not magical, but, you know, there was something quite attractive about that battle in the forest, you know, it being at night and so many of these great characters being a part of that fight and that escape, right? I don't know. There's just something special about a night battle. There just is, right? It kind of introduces a totally different dynamic. But again, you know, well, let's circle back before I forget. You know, the title of the episode, The Belly of the Beast. You know, Roy Mustang is in quite the situation. And, you know, the big revelation here being that essentially this inner circle of King Bradley, the Fuhrer, is all in on it. You know, him being a homunculus. That's a pretty big deal, right? So many knowing that he's a homunculus. And perhaps, or not perhaps, I'm sure, you know, Bradley had to get them on his side, right? He had to, or actually, I'm not even sure how the buildup of that inner circle came about. Perhaps they're all handpicked, right? Enticed and handpicked and promoted. I'm not sure, but there is something a bit jarring about so many of them knowing about King Bradley's true nature, right? Though King Bradley's true nature is actually quite fascinating. That's one of the most fascinating components of this story at this moment in time, I think. You know, the duality of King Bradley. The humanity of King Bradley is actually a fascinating component. You know, King Bradley is certainly one of the most interesting characters of the show, of this anime, of this story, as of this point. And then, you know, this episode certainly is a big one, right? An interesting one, an intriguing one for King Bradley and the other sins as well. You know, they are prominently featured in this episode. I get the introduction of Pride. I mean, it's quite a unique introduction, quite a strange one, right? Yet intriguing, of course. This disembodied voice in King Bradley's head, right? So perhaps a telepath, you know, communicating telepathically with King Bradley. And I love the presentation of that scene as well. You know, yes, it's just like a light, but he happens to stand in front of the light, or sorry, under the light, right? So kind of like King Bradley's in the spotlight, and, you know, Pride appears to be checking in on King Bradley, right? And from first impressions, it appears that Pride is almost not detached from father, but like does have a mind of its own, thoughts of its own, right? Removed from father's. It straight up tells Bradley or Pride, or sorry, Wrath, that I'll refrain from telling father about this, or revealing this to father. Your thoughts, your concerning thoughts, and that's the thing I meant about the duality and humanity of King Bradley, right? This is a man who has a foot in both worlds, essentially, a man of two hearts. He said some things that caused a bit of concern for Pride, right? And Pride had to remind King Bradley, do not forget, perhaps you've been alongside these humans for a bit too long, right? And you see, it's had an effect on Bradley, on Wrath, right? It appears that he's actually quite a decent father, quite a decent husband. But there is that notion and belief, even through someone like Pride, who I just kind of get introduced to, that he has developed human tendencies. He has them. He has human tendencies. And there's other things like him kind of conceding that, the younger generation's time is just around the corner, right? Almost casually just expressing interest in stepping down, right? Of course, that's a bit problematic for their goals, for their main or ultimate goals. And once again, Pride had to remind King Bradley of who they are, the true nature of their existence. But this concept of the younger generation, their time being just around the corner, I think it also mirrors the scenes with Mustang in the car, right? It focuses on Mustang a few times as he's kind of deep in thought, as it became clear that indeed they do have to let the Elrics and Ling take care of Gluttony, right? And they have to get out of here. And I thought it was great focusing on Mustang in that moment. And there's that one shot of him kind of watching Ed, the backs in the distance again, Ed running into the forest. But once again, it is a bit of a reminder to both Mustang and then of course Hawkeye as well, who gets quite a stern response from Al about, it doesn't matter if we're just children, right? There's that idea or that concept in football or soccer or football, make your pick, that, if you're good enough, you're old enough, right? So you can kind of apply that logic here. They've shown time and time again that they are good enough, that they are quite formidable in the field. So it was time to put their trusts in the Elric brothers and Ling as well. Ling is young. Something about his appearance doesn't make him seem like a young person, but he is. Right. And, there's even that shot of the next generation in that sense. It's the Elric brothers and Ling, and it's from the perspective of the older generation inside the car looking out. Right. Other than Lan Fan, who's, of course, in no condition to help. And she gets another stern telling off by Dr. Marco, who I'm really appreciating. Here you have someone from an even older generation. Right. And you see he's kind of really frustrated with some of the younger generation and their approach to things. Right. It appears that he's kind of sick of seeing young people die, right? He's fed up. He just doesn't like seeing young people put their lives at risk so easily, right? Give up their lives so easily. So yeah, his inclusion's been really quite fantastic, right? He's this experienced old head. There's a few experienced old heads in this episode. There's also the reappearance of Dr. Marco. Oh crap, okay, I mixed him up again. Earlier, I was just speaking about Dr. Knox. In the car and being frustrated. Now I'm talking about Dr. Marco. God damn it, I always get those mixed up. But yeah, the reappearance of Dr. Marco being held captive, prisoner. But one aspect of it really caught me by surprise. Him being an important sacrifice. Listen, unless he has kind of opened the gate as well and has faced the truth, they haven't shown anything on that matter just yet. Is there even a possibility that there is another qualifier for being a sacrifice or important candidate? Because, Mustang being a candidate or a sacrifice or an important candidate for sacrifice, I think that's the terminology associated with Mustang's role in all of this. That still needs explaining. I'm not even sure yet, because I know Roy Mustang hasn't attempted human transmutation and faced the truth, opened the gate, right? That hasn't happened. So I suppose there is another qualifier, but also, I have to think about the future of the story. If it hasn't happened yet, maybe it is going to happen in the future, right? Maybe maybe there is an expectation that the things that the sins and Father has Dr. Marco doing, or the plan they have for Dr. Marco, maybe it does include having him, I don't know, opening the gate, facing the truth. Maybe that also applies to Mustang, that they are going to kind of get him to do it somehow. But there's also other questions. How come Mustang is this candidate, right? An important candidate for sacrifice. Why exactly do they need him to become a sacrifice? So, that's another question. Does the person's alchemy matter at all? Him being the flame alchemist, is that a big thing for their plans? But in terms of Dr. Marco, apparently he's really close. Apparently he's on the right track in terms of the big grand plan, right? His hypothesis was that, they're kind of essentially going to use the people of this country and create this massive transmutation circle and create a massive Philosopher's Stone. So I think, the aspect of the massive transmutation circle, I think he's probably on the right track about that. Or he's right about that, I think, because they've hinted at that already. You look at the map of Armistice, I think that's the first time I'm actually saying it. Armistice. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that map has been prominently featured in the background, but looming in the background enough that it's noticeable, right? It's a big circle. It's a big circle, so that makes sense. The entire country, the entire nation is essentially going to be used as a transmutation circle. And, a lot of times they'll even give you a shot from above, right? Of Central. And again, looks like a transmutation circle. Now, all of this was kind of really established up front, right? In a noticeable manner. And I'm speaking of the first episode. And then, of course, there's other incidents, right? You think of the Ishvalan Civil War, right? The immense loss of life, the immense amount of life that was taken, right? And then, of course, Xerxes, that just kind of disappeared overnight, right? So, it's starting to become much more clear now that indeed that might be the case there. I think I kind of theorized about that, right? A few episodes ago, that indeed that might be the case. A calamity happened and, it disappeared overnight. I think that might have been it. That's the reason all those people just disappeared, because they were used in this big transmutation circle attempt of sorts, I think. But it still remains to be seen the things that came out of it. And of course, the only two survivors being the Eastern and the Western Sage, right? And of course, the Eastern Sage resembles or has an uncanny resemblance to the Elric brothers' father. But let me kind of go back to Roy Mustang, right? And his slip up. Him kind of getting overconfident, him getting a bit restless, right? Impatient, and kind of, stepping into the belly of that beast, into hell, essentially. Now, I don't think he's in any danger, in the grand scheme of things, because he is, again, that important candidate for a sacrifice. And of course, King Bradley knows this, but he might be getting some sort of slap on the wrist. And, the running theme here for Roy Mustang is that he's a bit slow to pick up on some of these lessons, but he does understand Mace Hughes, for sure, right? The things he was trying to teach him. And, the other aspect of it, he kind of puts together right at that moment as well, as he's faced with the corruption, the military. He also failed to take the lesson from that chess match. Grumman was it? Grumman tells him that, he put up a good fight. And the moment he was sure that he had it won, he blew it. And of course, Roy Mustang's response to Grumman, did I let my guard down? Yeah, he did. And now he has himself in quite the situation. But I'm sure it's all part of this larger character progression and development for Roy Mustang. He'll learn from these lessons down the line. He'll learn from his mistakes, for sure, right? It's certainly a bit of a setback now, right? As he is on their radar at this moment. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that situation, because that task has now become exponentially tougher, right? Because the inner circle, the higher ups, are all in on it. They know already that he's a homunculus, right? And they keep it quiet. So it'll be interesting to see the new approach to this, because it's going to require a new approach. That last approach, it's done. It's done and dusted. But yeah, once again, I get to see the calm and composed nature of King Bradley, of Wrath, right? The cold fury of Wrath. I mean, that is, I mentioned a few episodes ago, that is one of the most intimidating characters of the show, of the story. Yet, the duality of King Bradley, on one end, he can be so intimidating, so sinister, right? Terrifying to be across. But also there's that other side to King Bradley, the humanity of King Bradley as well, right? It's an interesting one. It's certainly one of the standouts of this ensemble cast of fantastic characters, right? So many of them. But as I'm on the topic of King Bradley once again, let's go to that conversation once again. Pride and King Bradley. Now, let me kind of focus on some of the characteristics of that voice. It sounded like the voice of the truth, right? I mean, it had a similar effect, right? In the sense that it felt like there's a couple of different voices, maybe two voices on top of each other, really reminiscent of the truth. It really reminded me of the truth. Underneath it, there was that voice that is kind of similar to one of a child, of a young girl, right? That's the feeling I was getting. That, listening to it, I was like, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, the truth, for sure. It really reminded me of the truth, or the voice of the truth, at least. And you see that it is, pride is certainly a sin that is able to kind of check in on wrath. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see the physical form of pride. At moments I thought maybe it is kind of taking the shape or form of the things around King Bradley, perhaps, but I thought it was interesting to have that be a feature of that scene as well, right? The spider and the trap, the trap being laid. And of course, our Roy Mustang kind of walks right into a trap as well by the end of it. But yeah, as of this point, I don't have a physical form for pride. But yeah, how cool, how intriguing. The only one that's left now is Sloth, who I've seen a quick glimpse of, right? Episodes ago at this point. But yeah, Pride is certainly one that is higher up in the ranks in terms of the sins, for sure. King Bradley, I'm going on and on about his duality and the humanity of King Bradley. Essentially, he was deliberately created to be more human than the other sins, right? Because here you have a sin that is able to age. Greed recognized all of the other sins, of course, they've all existed over 200 years, but he didn't recognize King Bradley, right? King Bradley's only 60 years old, meaning he ages. So there is something special about the buildup of King Bradley, right? That's a given. But, let me go back to that whole notion of Ling and Lan Fan sensing something unique about these sins, right? The chi, right? Now you have a second one. They noticed the same thing with envy. Even earlier, they have a quick moment as, they're about to get in the car and the dog shows up, right? And they look around real quick because to them, it felt like, oh, a bunch of people showed up, right? But no, it wasn't a bunch of people. It was just that one sin. So that's two of them confirmed to have the same type of buildup, right? And then you have King Bradley, who does not emit that type of chi. So at this point, I think I'm getting enough information here to kind of distinguish King Bradley's buildup or the buildup of his stone to be unique, right? It doesn't seem to have those hundreds and hundreds of souls that Ling and Lan Fan are able to sense in the other two sins, right? So if it appears to be normal, it might be because there's just the one soul, right? That's normal. That's a normal human buildup. And, if that is the case, does that have anything to do with this ability to age, right? Though, the reproduction element is still, it's still the same, right? They confirm that Salim is adopted. And, speaking of Salim, I got another appearance. It was the exact same hall, so I immediately thought, oh, maybe, a ball is going to come rolling in and Salim's going to walk into frame, right? And I'm going to have another moment here, Salim and his father. But no, instead I got Pride. And, as Salim is reciting the essay later on at dinner, there's that one line that really stuck out to me, the people of this country are always in my father's heart, So I thought that was interesting, though the interesting component also being that he might not actually have hundreds and hundreds of souls in his Philosopher's Stone, right? Because he's not giving off that strange chi. And then lastly, how about that ending? Oof, inside the belly of the beast indeed. Though, of course, it seems like it's almost like a different realm, right? That he's been transported to a different realm. Because it was them being sucked in through this new opening, this new form. Again, the eye was prominently featured. And the eye actually seemed to have its own reactions to things, especially, as it come across the dummy of Roy Mustang. It had a reaction to that as well. So yeah, perhaps I'll get an answer to that, a definitive one, about it potentially having links to the gate, right? The truth and all that. You know, it's the same eye, as Ed recognized earlier in the last episode. Same type of eye, essentially. It was actually even kind of reminiscent of Eren waking up inside that Titan, right? Earlier in season 1 of Shingeki. But yeah, you know, again, it appears to be this realm. It seems to have all these relics, you know, skeletons. But the exciting prospect is that Ling is in there too, right? Ling, who continues to be just a fantastic character. Seeing them two kind of in there, though of course they're separated at the moment. But you know, seeing those two in there together, that promises to be exciting. And you know, the whole setting and the things they might come across, and you know, potential revelations, exciting prospect for sure. But yeah, that's about it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in early access or perhaps even full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. And there is 2 episodes of early access at this point, at the time of posting this. So yeah, maybe that's a bit more enticing than before. But yeah, you know, the links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, Twitter and Instagram, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your time, as time is precious. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.